Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Board Game Reviews. This week, instead of the monthly vlog, we are going to do a video since it's Halloween time. Going to be as thematic as possible and show you a list of great games to play on this Halloween. Now, this isn't going to be a top 10 list of games that are the best games to play on Halloween. This is going to be a list of games that fit a whole bunch of different mechanics or different play styles. So pretty much what this is this going to be a list where you can look at this list and I can guarantee you're going to find at least one game to play with your friends and your family on Halloween. So come on back after the break for a little bit of fun. Starting off the list is going to be Horrified. It's a 1 to 5 player cooperative game from Ravensburg on Prospero Hall. This is a cooperative game that's very strongly inspired from classic horror movies such as Lon Chaney Jr., The Wolfman, Dracula, The Invisible Man, The Thing from the Creature from the Black Lagoon, all these different classic horror monsters. And this is a game strongly inspired by those things, but it's in a very, I hate to say it, but it's actually a very family-friendly package. Because this is a game of exploration and working together as a group where the players are working together to go to all these different locations to try to find the tools they need to defeat these classic horror villains. Basically on your turn, you're going to have a certain amount of actions based on your roll, anywhere from 3 to 5 different actions. And they're very simple actions. They're actions such as moving in different locations, actions such as picking up items on the board, actions such as interacting with certain locations to defeat these bad guys you're trying to defeat, or even just interacting with different tokens on the board that allow you to work closer towards defeating these bad guys. After all the players, or after a player takes their turn, there's somebody going to flip over a card from a deck, and that's going to tell you how the bad guys are going to interact. First thing it's going to do is tell you how many extra tokens you're going to add to the board at various different locations based on the tokens. This is going to tell you how the bad guys are going to start interacting, and they're going to start moving around the board. Here's the trick about this game. This is basically kind of a set collection game built into a cooperative game where the players are trying to work together to build these sets of tokens that they need to do things such as defeat these coffins. For example, you're playing versus Dracula, or other things such as moving over, trying to move a boat down a track to eventually go ahead and take out the creature from the Black Lagoon. Here's the trick about the game though. As you're playing the game, different things are going to happen, such as different people from the village are going to pop on the board, and these monsters are going to start walking around the board. If they land on a space with a hero, there's a chance that they're going to attack a hero. If they attack a hero, you're going to have to either sacrifice these pieces you've been collecting, or you're going to end up going to the hospital. Now here's the trick about the game. As these bad guys start defeating the heroes and the villagers, this track right here is slowly going to climb up. If this track ever gets to the end, the players instantly lose the game. So the players have a pressure of trying to get these ingredients and all these pieces and all these items in effort to defeat these bad guys. Not only that, they're also fighting the pressure of this deck of cards itself. Now this deck of cards is very limited, and once you go through this entire deck of cards, the players have lost the game because they've taken far too long to win the game. So you have a game that's very easy to teach, very simple actions. You're fighting a timer with a deck of cards. You're fighting a timer with all these different bad things are going to happen as your heroes and your villagers are slowly being defeated versus all these bad guys. Now the cool thing about this game is it does come with many different bad guys. You have Frankenstein, you have Dracula, you have the Wolfman, you have the Invisible Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Heck, you can go ahead and look at the cover and see all the bad guys that have been included here. But the cool thing about this game is you actually play against multiple bad guys, and every time you play the game, you're going to choose the amount of bad guys you can play against. The more bad guys you add to the board, the tougher it is, and also some of the bad guys are just straight up tougher than some of the other ones. And some of them interact differently, creating a whole bunch of different challenges. So you have this game that on the surface looks very simple, very easy, and it's very easy to teach, but it actually has a lot of replay. It's a nice family-friendly looking game. I mean, this is a game that you can easily play with your family because these miniatures don't look super scary. The board itself doesn't look scary. It has a very strong Scooby-Doo vibe, and on top of all this, you have a really great price point. While all of us are battling the current Kickstarter phenomena, and even board games coming out from companies going all the way up to $175 just to get a whole bunch of plastic, here we have a game that retails for $35, and let's be fair, all of us have Barnes & Noble cards, so all of us are going to get this game for $30. A great little family Halloween game that plays quickly in under an hour, plays up to 5 people, and you can have an entire family sitting around a table with this nice Scooby-Doo looking graphically game with a good amount of fun, a great amount of replay, and enough variety to keep everybody entertained throughout the entire game. That is going to be Horrified from Ravensburg and Prospero Hall, a 1 to 5 player cooperative game. Next on the list here we have Dread, an RPG from a company called The Impossible Dream. Now Dread is a one-shot RPG that throws away every one of the misconceptions and the thought processes that we have from our standard RPGs to create a totally new RPG environment that is 100% centered and 100% perfect for the horror genre when it comes to RPGs. Because when it comes to horror, the best thing that we need with horror is we need ambiance, we need a good story, and we need something to raise attention. Something like Jenga. Now I know you're looking and going, how the heck can Jenga raise the horror level and raise the theme and bring everything out? Well, let me explain to you exactly how Dread works. Dread is a one-shot RPG, so it's an RPG that plays up to 5, 6, maybe 7 players, depending on what kind of RPG group you like. But this is 100%, well, 99% a horror-style RPG. Sure, there's some offshoots, you can do sci-fi and various different things, but it's pretty much a horror RPG. But the interesting thing about how this game is played, it's a completely diceless game. And the way this is going to go is you're going to have somebody who's going to be the storyteller or the GM, DM, whatever you want to call them. I know we all played Dungeons & Dragons, so we pretty much call it the DM at this point. But your idea is you're going to create different questionnaires for every single one of the people who are going to be playing the game of Dread with you. And you'll email them to them, and they just have to have that questionnaire filled out before they go to game night, and they have to email it back to you. And these are going to be questionnaires that allows them to build up the character, except the questions are going to be very, very interesting. That allows them to give them a little bit of an idea of why they're in the predicament, but doesn't give them a complete idea of what's going on. For example, somebody may get a question that has about 10 questions on it, and the first question on may be, why do you have a lump on your head? Why are you bleeding from your left side? And why is there a gun in your left pocket? Also, why have you had such a drug addiction all these times? And why are you trying to go to NA to fix these problems for you? Or various different questions like this to help the game master create the story for every one of these characters. And all these players will bring their characters to the table, and then they're going to act out these characters. But here's the interesting thing about Dread. Every time you want to do an action that can potentially fail, the game master isn't going to have you roll dice. The game master isn't going to do carte blanche to try to figure out exactly what's going to happen. There's somebody going to look at the Jenga tower and tell you to make a certain amount of pulls from the Jenga tower based on just how difficult the action you want to take is. For example, if you're trying to jump from one rafter to another, maybe one pull from the Jenga tower itself. What if you're trying to jump from one rafter to another in a barn that happens to be on fire and the hay around you is starting to catch on fire and you're really in danger? Maybe it's going to be 2 pulls. But what if we add on even that to a little more, and there's a crazy machete-wielding maniac carrying a hockey mask or wearing a hockey mask who's standing right below, and if you fail that jump, you're going to fall to your peril and something's going to happen. You're probably going to die here really, really quickly. That may be 3 pulls from the Jenga tower. And eventually you're going to keep making pulls from the Jenga tower, but here's the challenge for the game itself. As you're making these pulls from the Jenga tower, the tower slowly but surely becoming more fragile, more unstable, and becoming closer and closer and closer to falling. Here's the fun part of the game. If you're trying to lift something from the Jenga tower and put it on top, and if you knock over the Jenga tower, your character, your hero, is going to be the next to die. Now, you may not die immediately, but you are going to be the next person to die, and that's what adds so much to the fun of the game. Because I'm sure if you played Jenga before, we know how we start getting a little bit of a shaky hand going as we're trying to make sure we're not knocking over the Jenga tower. But imagine that happening while somebody's trying to tell you a horror story. So now you get your blood pumping and your adrenaline going because you got the Jenga tower, but you got your heart pumping and your adrenaline going because somebody's also trying to tell you a horror story where all your friends are around you and they start cheering for you and the tension just starts ramping up, and you create this wonderful environment that allows you to tell a horror story in an RPG. Now, your average games of Dread are going to run anywhere from about 3 to 5 hours. You can run a little bit less or a little bit more depending on your group or depending on the story, whether you're trying to tell the story about a group of people who wake up with a hangover on the top floor of a hotel in Las Vegas while the world around them is coming crashing down, or you can tell a more standard one such as a werewolf story, or maybe all the players had their vehicles crash or break down in the middle of the night and all they see is that mansion on the top of the hill, and they all decide to walk towards the mansion where our story begins. That's Dread, the RPG. If you're looking for a horror game about the end of the world, then look no further than Planet Apocalypse, because this is literally a planet that's reached the apocalypse because the hordes of hell have managed to break through onto our planet, and they're doing everything they can to ruin our wonderful world and bring total ruin and damnation to our planet. But this is a cooperative game, and it's also inspired by a tower defense game, and the very basic idea of this game is this is a tower defense game. Every single round, the players are going to get some actions. They're going to get actions such as moving different locations, using special abilities, shooting their guns, and their basic objective is they're trying to take out these bad guys. The trick of the game, though, is then this game does come with multiple maps. This is just one of the more little bit slightly more difficult maps available in the game. The basic map is actually an S shape. But the basic ideas of the game is that these creatures are going to be advancing every single round. And of course, I'm kind of breaking the rules here. I'm just trying to show you how the game plays. Every single round, the monsters are going to be advancing. And if the monsters ever get to their end goal, depending on the map, something's going to happen. But generally speaking, what's going to happen is the Doom track is going to go up. The Doom track ever gets to level 13, our heroes have lost the game. But there's one other thing working against our heroes, and that's going to be a Grand Lord who is also slowly advancing as time goes on based on what happens and based on a timer that we're fighting that is based on the amount of heroes in the game. If the Lord ever gets to the starting area, it doesn't matter how low we manage to keep the Doom track, if the Lord ever gets to the starting area, our heroes have lost and the gates of hell have opened up and destroyed our entire planet. Time to start all over, bring in some new heroes and see if you can succeed a second time. Now this is a really cool game because it adds a couple interesting twists to the standard tower defense game. The very first thing that comes with this game that's nice and fun is the fact that every person is going to get their own hero sheet. And your hero sheet has a couple bonuses, and it also has a certain amount of negative that every one of our heroes must standardly have to live with. And that kind of adds an interesting amount of thematic ability to the game because you have some flawed heroes, which is kind of fun. Not only that, but there's also going to be some gifts that are available in the game. And our heroes can buy these gifts based on getting courage tokens from defeating all these bad guys. So every time you play the game is going to play ever so slightly differently with every single hero because the way you're going to level up the heroes is going to be different based on the amount of gifts that are available every time you play the game. Because the game is going to come with a board that has a certain amount of gifts on it, and every couple of rounds that gift board is going to be completely wiped out, and we're going to fill it up all the way over again. And again, we're going to be spending our courage to buy these gifts. The trick is once your courage board or your gift section is completely filled up, your hero cannot advance anymore, and by then you should be ready to take out the grand bad guy, because if not, he's probably reached the end anyways, and your chances of surviving are almost at nil at this point. So this is a cooperative game for 1 to 5 players. Now it's for 1 to 5 players, but the difficulty level of the game has been basically set that you should have at least 2 heroes in the game at all times. You can play up to 5 heroes, obviously, since it does play up to 5 players, but this is a game that you really don't want to be playing with 1 hero because, well, I don't even think it's possible to win at that point. If you've done it and you found a way to do it, let me know in the comments down below, but as far as I can tell, and I've tried many times, you can't beat the game with 1 hero. But the game is really great because there are a lot of expansions and there's lots of cool things about this game that add to the variety, add to the replay, and definitely ramp up the challenge of the game. Because there's many things that you can go and choose from every time you play this game that modifies the challenge, modifies the difficulties, and modifies just the way you play the game. Every time you play the game, you're going to pick a certain amount of Circle 4 demons, and every one of these Circle 4 demons plays differently. Every time you play the game, you're going to pick a lord that you're trying to defeat, and every one of these lords play very differently. Every time you play the game, you're going to pick a different map, and trust me when I say these maps all play very different. This basic map right here is very challenging because in the very standard map, if these bad guys manage to walk off the board, you don't need to worry about them anymore. They're not a problem. Whoops. Hey, maybe good guys shouldn't walk off the board. But these bad guys manage to walk off the board, the Doom track may go up, but you don't have to worry about it no more. Unless a little bit more advanced map, if they manage to circle, guess what? They're going to go to the top of the track again, which means you can't let these bad guys get off the map because you're going to lose the game. You're going to have maps that actually have the bad guys coming from 3 directions, more of like a T-junction. You're going to have maps where they're slowly working up on a ladder type thing on a circular map that looks like our planet. So there's all these maps that add to the replay variety. You have different heroes you can choose from. I think there's got to be at least maybe a dozen different heroes available for this game. Maybe more at this point, especially if you look at the new Kickstarter that just came out for it. So you have a lot of variety in this cooperative tower defense game that has so many options with the maps, with the bad guys, with the heroes, and just how the game's going to play every single time you play it. That's Planet Apocalypse. Next up, fitting the role of the traitor and also cooperative turning into the traitor role is the game Betrayal Legacy. Or if you want, you just play Betrayal: A House on the Hill. But I prefer Betrayal Legacy because this is the way a legacy game should be done. A game that you're going to play with a whole bunch of friends over a whole bunch of rounds and a whole bunch of games. And once you're done playing the game, you can still keep playing and have your own unique gaming experience, because that, in my mind, is how legacy games should be played. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. What exactly is Betrayal Legacy? This is a game that is inspired by every single horror movie, every horror trope, every horror book, and everything we see in the horrors thrown together to create this wonderful gameplay experience that can be very wonderful and sometimes not that good, but almost all the time it's going to be pretty darn good. Occasionally it'll fall apart, but You'll see why in just a second. The basic idea of the game is that every single player at the start of the game, we're all going to be playing this cooperative game where we are exploring this haunted, well, maybe not haunted, but we're exploring this mansion. And of course, we've seen all those horror movies, and we know in the horror movies, it's always a fantastic idea for everybody to split up and get separated as quickly as possible, because we know that works out great for everybody. Never, ever does. But the idea of the game is that the players are going to be on their turns, they're going to be going out there, and they're going to continue to explore this mansion until something happens and this haunt is going to spawn, basically because we're going to find too many omens. Once that happens, we are going to get the haunt that's going to start. And once the haunt is started, we're going to play a certain haunt based on who discovered the final omen, who unlocked it, and what is going on. And generally speaking, personally, or the person who explored the haunt and started the final omen is going to become the traitor. Once somebody is a traitor, they're going to take the traitor tome and they're going to turn to a certain page in here. It's going to tell them how they, and they alone, now most likely have become the bad guy and how they can win the game, while all the other survivors are going to take the Secrets of Survival tome or book, and they're going to turn to a special page in here, and they're also going to learn how they are going to survive. And basically this game is going to take every single horror trope we've ever seen. Something's going to come after the players and it's going to be controlled by the bad guy, whether it happens to be a maniac, whether it happens to be a haunted house, whether something else is going on. And I'm trying to be very, very vague with my explanations here because this is a legacy style game. And you notice I actually have the box covered up here, so you can't see inside the box and see everything what we have completely unlocked. Basically, the idea of this game is you're going to start with very few locations in the beginning, but as you play the game, you're going to start unlocking more and more of this mansion, and your version of Betrayal Legacy is going to play differently from everybody else's because some of these locations you're going to keep, some of these game locations you're going to destroy, some of these cards you're going to keep, some of these cards you're going to destroy, and as you play, your family, and I'm not going to show you the backside of this, but your family is going to change, your family is going to evolve, and become different as you go through the game of Betrayal Legacy. This game is fun when it is fun. Of course, there are the occasional times when it's not as fun as it could be. But even those times, if you keep a good spirit and a good attitude, it's still a good experience. It may not be balanced, but it's still a wonderful experience because sometimes a person becomes a traitor, maybe a little bit too powerful, or sometimes a person becomes a traitor, may not be powerful enough, but it still creates this wonderful storytelling environment, this wonderful classic horror feel, keeps all the classic horror vibes, and again, it puts it all in a legacy style game where all your decisions matter. Everything you're doing as you're playing this game is going to matter, and you're going to create this grand story over multiple play sessions, and then at the end of this, you can keep playing the game. Even though it's not going to change anymore, you're going to have your own very special copy of the game with your special item cards that are special to you and your group, your special event cards, your special omens, your special locations, and just how the house is going to be built every single time you play is going to be very special to your group of friends to continue playing this game of Betrayal Legacy. Next up on the list, we have Evil High Priest. Now, Evil High Priest is a worker placement game for 2 to 5 players from Peterson Games. And this is a game where you actually get to be the bad guy because you get to play the Evil High Priest. And the basic idea of this game is you are going to be just playing like your typical worker placement game where you're going to send your workers out to various different locations. You're going to gain resources from the locations and use those resources to do various different things in the game. But here's the kicker and the interesting thing about how the game works. It actually takes some inspiration from some different mechanics to throw it together to create a game that's much more than some of its equal parts. Because this game is a game that you're going to play on multiple different maps, and every time you play the game, you're going to pick a different map. Whatever map you're going to choose is going to affect just exactly how the game plays. Now, there's well over a half dozen maps in this game, and every one of them plays differently, and you're going to use your resources to go ahead and collect things such as breaking down these different elder signs, and the game is going to play until the final elder sign is broken, and then the player is going to add up the scores. Here's the second really cool thing about this game. The resources you're gathering as you're playing this game, such as the magic symbols, the blood, the money, all these different things you're trying to gather, all these different resources you're trying to gather as you're playing the game, these resources are your victory points. So every action that you do as you're playing this game, you must be very conscious of because you're using your resources to gain more victory points. So you're basically using your victory points in an effort to gain more victory points. So if you're spending your resources bad, you're throwing away victory points. Not only that, this game is very interesting because every evil high priest needs their own sanctum where they're doing all their evil things. So as you're playing the game, you need to be building up your sanctum with various different defenses because your sanctum is where you're going to keep all the resources you're gaining. which adds an interesting additional wrinkle to the game. And then there's one more final interesting wrinkle to the game, the fact that multiple times as you're playing through the game, investigators are going to go through the game and they're going to attack every single player's sanctum, and they're going to raid the sanctum for the resources. So the way you build up your sanctum is very important, because if you do a poor job building up the defenses of your sanctum, these investigators are going to come in and they're going to wreck your sanctum and you're going to lose all your resources. And again, don't forget, your resources are your victory points. So you have this game that's evolved the standard worker placement game by creating a game where you have resources as your victory points. You have to protect your resources and guard your resources. So this isn't a game where you're just racing to a location going, aha, I got here first, I got all these resources and you can't have them. Because if you go out there rushing at these resources and you're not smart enough to protect them, you're going to gain all those resources and watch these investigators come through, march through your sanctum and take away all those resources from you, and everybody else is going to go, yeah, big aha. Good job protecting resources. Now you have 0 victory points. Great job over there. So you have this game that's created this interesting mechanics of worker placement, resource protection, scoring victory points, going through all these different locations as a standard worker placement game with some interesting things such as very powerful guard dogs. Okay, you can't really call a shotgun the guard dog, but you can have guard dogs protecting your sanctum. You can do various different things with these different locations. And as I said already, every time you play the game, you're going to pick one map that's going to go along with the city location. And that map is going to add different things to the game, because you're trying to break through with all the elder signs to go ahead and bring the end of the game and score the most victory points by having the most resources and winning the game. If you're looking for one heck of a challenge this Halloween season, look no further than Dawn of the Zeds, a Romero-inspired zombie tower defense game that can play all the way up to 4 players as a cooperative game. Or if you want to have somebody controlling the zombies, you can go all the way up to 5 players. But this is a standard tower defense game where this is anything but a standard game, because in this game, the hordes of zombies are approaching towards your village faster than you can defeat them, and you have very few survivors who are working and doing everything they can to work as fast as possible to survive a grueling event deck while avoiding the whims of fate, while also trying to do as much research as they can to find the cure for the zombie plague and just survive long enough to get through this horrible, vicious, mean, and evil event deck. Survive all the way through the event deck, and you get to look at your score based on how well you did on working towards the research, how well you did on keeping people alive, and just how well you did in keeping the zombie hordes back from attacking and invading the town center, where, if that happens, you instantly lose the game. Now, this is a game that is very, very brutal at times. I love using the name brutal when I describe this game, because that truly is the best word to describe this game. This is a game that's no holds barred, no hand holding, and this game has no qualms about just doing what zombies do, overrunning you and destroying all your well-laid plans, because this is a game that's designed to keep you on the edge of your seat at all times. There are so many times I play this game where I started playing the game saying, I'm actually doing pretty good. Things are actually looking pretty good. Then the zombies come, and then more zombies come, and then more zombies come, and then one of my heroes dies, and then another hero is sent to the hospital, and then all these survivors I'm trying to keep out there alive, they start getting attacked by zombies. Then the infection track starts going up, and then everything just starts falling apart at that point, and I'm just looking at the event deck going, okay, 5 more event cards, 5 more event cards, I can do this, as the zombie hordes keep marching and marching and marching. And this is one of those games that every time I've won it, I have literally won it by the skin of my teeth. There's never been a time where I've been able to sit back and go, yeah, that was kind of pushover. Wasn't much challenge that one. No, this is one of those games that every time I play this game, it is just a total, complete, very challenging game that very much keeps the pressure on you at all times. This is a cooperative game that feels like a tower defense game where the zombie hordes are marching along those tracks, but there's a lot of theme built in this game. There's a lot of very fun references. There's very cool references to classic Romero films. While this game has all these classic references, it's also keeping a very strong feel of a classic Romero film. At no time in this game are you going to be whizzing around on your roller skates, dual-wielding chainsaws while you're swinging around and taking out the zombie hordes. This is a game where you're fighting for supplies, you're fighting for ammo, you're fighting for food while everything is working against you, and if only you can survive for one more card draw, one more action, or just one more event to save your skin, that is the game of Dawn of the Zeds. If you're looking for a deck building game that has a very loose campaign system and allows you to play from anywhere from 1 to 6 players in a cooperative horror style genre game. Look at Apocrypha, the adventure card game. This is a game from the same company that brought us the classic Pathfinder adventure card game and evolved the system to go ahead and create a more modern sci-fi horror mix style game where our players are experiencing our modern world, much more inspired by TV shows such as Supernatural or even Grimm or TV shows like that, where the modern world exists, but inside the modern world, the evils, the monsters, the werewolves, the vampires, and all those bad things exist in our world, and there's hunters out there trying to take out these bad guys and save us from the evils of the world itself. But in this game, the players each get a deck of cards, which is going to represent our heroes, and we're going to be using these cards to go ahead and visit different locations. At these different locations, when we go there and visit these different locations, we may find things such as good boons, such as a prey wheel, which may help us overcome future bad guys. We may find actual bad guys themselves, such as a candy striper, which is a giant spider, which is trying to scare children, create horrible nightmares, and devour kids in their sleep. Or maybe we may run into a contagion. It's a plague that's ruining the city, and it's something we're trying to stop. Or maybe even as we're working through, we may fight the minions of the bad guy, or even eventually we may have to fight the master bad guy himself. And our eventual goal is to go through all these different locations, find the master bad guy, defeat them, and save the city and bring happiness and joy, at least until the next mission starts. Because this game is a very loose campaign system. And by loose campaign system, I mean that we are going to level up our heroes, but we're playing in the modern world. And in the modern world, we are the controllers of our destiny. And by controlling our destiny, we can travel anywhere across the United States to run into various different encounters and various different things that are affecting various parts of the world. And that's one of the fun things about this game, because as we play the game, there's different storylines and different campaigns depending on just how we want to interact with this world, whether it's going after skinwalkers, whether it happens to be going after monsters, or whether it happens to be going after a giant computer that's trying to bring the end of the world. There's a whole large campaign system, and we're not tied down by following a very strict narrative. We're in control of this narrative as we're leveling up our heroes, exploring this grand campaign world where our heroes may live and our heroes may die. And if that does happen, they are out of the campaign for good, and we must level up a new hero to try to survive those rigors of this horrible campaign world where darkness and evil exist among our true, normal, natural world. Now, the interesting thing about this game is this is a deck building game where our heroes are going to build a deck of cards, and they're going to get a halo, which gives them special extra abilities that allow them to technically, in a way, level up. But we're also going to level up by modifying the cards in our player deck. And as we level up, we're going to get more powerful cards. And these cards are going to allow us to encounter all these different locations. Because here's the interesting thing about how this game plays. This is also, along with being a deck building game, this is also a dice rolling game. Because every one of these encounters that we need to encounter, we need to roll dice to go ahead and defeat them. And the amount of dice we're going to get to roll is going to be based on our statistics and also based on cards that we're going to play. And we're simply going to roll a certain amount of dice based on what we manage to play card-wise, and we're looking to defeat a certain number by picking the 3 highest dice we roll, which is something that this game evolves over the traditional Pathfinder adventure card game. In the Pathfinder adventure card game, the objective of the game was to get as many powerful cards as you could, throw them all together to defeat the final bad guy as a group and take the final bad guy out. In this game, this is a game that's much more about dice manipulation, because when you roll the dice, you can only keep the top 3 dice. So dice manipulation in this game is much more important. And sometimes to manipulate these dice, you have to take risk on bad omen things that are going to make it much more challenging or cause some negatives for our heroes, or even cause a bad guy to temporarily escape. So we need to judge using these temporary things to make sure that we get the better dice rolls in an effort to take out these things, because sometimes things take a 16 to beat. Luckily I got that. But sometimes they're easier to beat, sometimes they're harder to beat than that. And the thing we have to be worried about is not all of our statistics are great. While she may be good at rolling red dice, which is our physical dice, and she may be decent at rolling mind dice, her spirit is only a 2, which means that if she has to fight something by using her spirit, she only has 2 dice to roll on things such as the gorilla, which requires a 17 to defeat. It's going to be very challenging for her, so hopefully she has some better cards in her deck to help her get some extra dice, because she's going to need those extra dice to take out this horrible bad guy, defeat him, so our heroes can save the day. If you're looking for a competitive or a team-based or even a cooperative game that plays all the way up to 8 players, is full of theme, and yes, even is full of tons of dice rolling and has a lot of replay variety and replay value built into it, look at A Touch of Evil from Flying Frog Productions, because this is a game that has everything, including the kitchen sink. I'm pretty sure there's actually a kitchen sink card in here somewhere if I looked hard enough. This is a game where the idea of the game is, depending if you're playing cooperatively or competitively or playing team-based, where the players are working to try to defeat a final bad guy. You figure out which the final bad guy is when you first start the game, and the players are working to try to find the bad guy. First thing they need to do is they need to explore all these locations out there to find some clues, while the bad guys work on their own machinations, and while the bad guy has their own special minions coming out there causing difficulty for our heroes, and while we're experiencing various different events, while the mysteries are happening across the board, while we're having encounters at these various different locations, while all this stuff is going on. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that there's actually 6 elders in this large town that we're working in, and some of these elders may be on our side, some of these elders may be working for the bad guy, and we don't know what's going to happen until something makes these elders manage to step out and either work for us or against us in this grand mystery that is A Touch of Evil. This is a game that is all about the theme and all about the dice rolling. I'm not going to try to pretend that this is some super deep strategic game where the players will be working on some deep strategies or anything like that. This is a game that is all about the fun, all about the experience, and all about the enjoyment of playing the game. As a matter of fact, this is one of those games that I think, even playing up to 8 players, it is a really game that's best played as a team-based game or team-based game when you're playing up to 8 players. But if you're okay with playing about 4 players, it's actually a great game that plays really well cooperatively, because the players are working together to get all these things and experiencing classic Victorian tropes in this board where we're all playing this game of exploration, going through all these different locations. And again, this is a game that's going to play differently every single time you play it. These are all the different minion charts for all the different bad guys. These are all the possible bad guys we can play against when we play this game. There are so many bad guys in this game. And not only that, if you buy the 10-year anniversary edition of this game, you get a very special version of the Headless Horseman, Victorian horror, Headless Horseman, who is even more powerful, much more challenging, and create much more chaos for our heroes. So whether you can play this game cooperatively as a group working together to try to defeat the bad guy, play the game competitively, whether it's a team-based competitive or everybody's on their own and try and just be the first person to behead the gargoyle and be the grand winner of the game, while avoiding the machinations of these town elders who may be for you or secretly against you. That's A Touch of Evil from Flying Frog Productions. When it comes to horror games may be fun, horror games may be thematic, horror games may be very enjoyable to play, but very few horror games actually get your blood pumping, which is why Zombie 15 is a game that I always love to play when it comes to Halloween, because when it comes to zombie games, this game gets your blood pumping more than any game I've ever played. This game has never failed to get everybody excited, get everybody at the table having those stand-up moments as everybody's just racing, screaming, and hollering, because this game builds the pressure up so darn quickly. Because this is a game that's played in exactly 15 minutes, and it's a game that's played to a soundtrack, and that soundtrack is slowly amping everything up, slowly adding to the chaos, slowly ramping up the difficulty, and making everything much more challenging in this game of survival for exactly 15 minutes. Now, Zombie 15 is a scenario-based game, and the scenarios are actually interconnected. You can play all the way up to all 20 scenarios to go through this grand victory in an effort to survive the zombie apocalypse. And this is actually a pretty darn simple game. On your turn, you're going to take a certain amount of actions. The amount of actions you get is based on the amount of players in the game. And the actions are things such as exploring the various different locations you're in, moving to an adjacent location, or even moving into a location that happens to control some zombies. Once you're in a location with some zombies, you can use an item that you happen to possess, and every one of these items only have a certain amount of uses. But you can use these items to defeat some zombies, which is good. Go ahead and defeat some zombies, because that's what you need to do. The trick is as you're using these items, their durability is going away, and once the item's durability is gone, that item is completely destroyed. And the only way you get more items is to go into more buildings, search more buildings, and start getting other items. The problem is that you're going to eventually start fighting items that only make noise, and you have to start making use of these items that make noise. So you can go into these locations and use these items that make noise, and unfortunately, when you make noise, the zombies that do die when you make noise are going to go into the horde box. And eventually, you're going to have a whole bunch of zombies in the horde box, and eventually the soundtrack is going to let you know that something's going to happen, and all these zombies are going to spawn on the board, and now the tension's ramped up. Because during the soundtrack, at various different intervals, a sound is going to be made, and when that sound is made, you're going to have more zombies added to the board. As more and more zombies get added to the board, the chaos and the trouble and the difficulties are going to start ramping up. So the players are going to start panicking. Your blood pressure is going to start raising. Your excitement is going to get raising because you don't want the zombie growl to happen on your turn. Because if it happens on your turn, the zombies are coming for you, and they want nothing more than to enjoy you as a wonderful little brain snack. So Zombie 15 is a wonderful game that gets you excited, gets you amped up, gets you having a lot of fun, and just gets so much excitement. This is one of those games where people get out of the chair, start jumping up, go, do this, quick, we need to get over here. Because every one of these missions is completely scenario based, and you have to survive this scenario as a group. And if you can't do so, then you have to go back and try to rescue the heroes that have been knocked down by the zombies. Because everybody escapes alive or nobody escapes alive in this game of Zombie 15, the 15-minute zombie survival game. No Halloween would be complete without a game of Fury of Dracula, a deduction game for 2 to 5 players that is actually 33 years old now. I think this game has actually had 4 full editions now and 2 different publishers, from Games Workshop to Fantasy Flight Games. And I think even now it's, well, the last current publisher was WizKids, but this game has gone through many iterations and many publishers because this is a game that is really, really fantastic. In my mind, this is probably one of the best deduction, competitive deduction style games. One person is playing a secret role that is hiding throughout the world, and the other player's only objective is to find that one person playing that role, defeat them, and win the game as a group. So it's a team-based game. In this case, one person is playing Dracula, while the other players are playing the people who are doing their best to hunt down Dracula, find out where he's hiding, and put a stake right through his heart and save all of Europe from his horrible, horrible evil. But the trick of the game is nobody knows where Dracula is except the Dracula player. Because in this game, instead of taking your Dracula miniature and moving around the board, going to all these different locations, your miniature stays in place over there, taunting the players and tempting them and just going, hey everybody, I'm hiding, but where am I hiding at? Well, the location I'm hiding at is based on a card, and I'm going to take this card and I'm going to place it on track face down, and that tells everybody where my current location is. And that's a good way for me to document my current location so nobody can accuse me of cheating. But as the game goes on, we're going to move that card down, and I'm going to move to the next location. Now, these locations are not random. I'm actually looking at this deck of cards and picking my location. So I'm picking legal locations, but the players have no idea where I am. So on their turn, they're going to be playing through a day phase and through a night phase. And they're going to be doing different things, such as taking railroad tracks, searching different locations, buying railroad tickets, buying gear, buying equipment, doing the best thing they can to try to figure out just where Dracula happens to be hiding. Because if they find Dracula, they can try to defeat him while they're also going through events. Now, the interesting thing about the events are there's good events and then there are bad events. And if the top card is on the top uses a Dracula event, you can try to avoid drawing those events. The trick about the game, though, is when it comes to events, during certain times of the game, you can pick event cards from the top. During other times of the game, you have to pick event cards from the bottom, which you don't know if it's going to be a good event or it might be a bad event, which adds to the extra challenge of the game. So the eventual goal of the game is for the players to hunt down and find Dracula before he can spread his influence far enough along the track. If he gets his influence track far enough along the game, Dracula has won because it created too much darkness across Europe. But here's the kicker about this game. This is a game of cat and a game of mouse, because in this game, Dracula is not a pushover. While the players are doing their best to hunt down Dracula, Dracula is also hunting other players and trying to find a way to get one of the heroes alone from all the other players, because if they do so, they can pop out as long as they are legally at that location and attack that player. And if they attack that player enough times, they're going to slowly also increase the darkness track, because the players have to worry about the influence of Dracula's bite. The more of Dracula's influence upon them, the more this track is going to go up. And on top of this, there's also a built-in timer, because as you're playing the game, the weeks are going to go by, and after a certain amount of weeks go by, the Dracula track, the influence track, is start going to raise up even faster. So the players have a time pressure of trying to find somebody who is hiding when he wants to, and somebody's out in the open when he wants to, which is a wonderful game of cat and mouse, which is Fury of Dracula, a game that's been around for 33 years for a very, very good reason, because this is a fantastic deduction game. One player gets to play the cat and the mouse anytime they want to be, because they are Dracula. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you find some wonderful inspiration for games to play with your family, your friends, or even just to play solo this Halloween. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. I'll be sure to answer emails as quickly as I can. If you enjoy this content and this channel, think about supporting the channel over on Patreon. Just a simple $1 in the tip jar can help me cover my costs and help keep the channel growing strong. That's patreon.com/otsbgr. If you enjoyed this video series, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching and happy Halloween.